They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole we found. And I was thinking.
Hi, this is Nikolai, and you're listening to my dad, Rafal, co-host James Jardine, and featuring Mr. Jim Tiller on the one and only Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Plug in, listen up, and enjoy.
Deep into this pool of regrettable situations. Pitch black, think back to the last time that we were happy.
All right, and Rock jumps in just as we hit record. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast, the industry's longest running, continuously running cybersecurity podcast as we do our year-end wrap-up. And we might have some people joining and popping out as we go here. This is going to be a little longer, a little more conversation, a little bit more fun. And I'm going to start this off by saying, yes, I am wearing a rainbow unicorn Band-Aid, because I found out exactly how sharp the knife I carry is. When I went to cut something, I'm cutting it this way, I'm holding it, I went like this, and I went, ooh, and all of a sudden, drip, drip, drip.
Tell me you have kids without telling me you have kids.
Right, yeah. What do you mean? I love this. I love this.
Yeah, I love this. I knew that.
Perfect the finger it went on. And just the fact that, just like for like concealed carry, there should probably be a course or something like that for you to carry a knife.
You get licensed.
Listen, I was well, my kids won't see this podcast, so I'll tell you. I bought them dirt bikes. I'm putting like little, cutting off the zip ties of all the foot pedals and stuff like that. And this one they zip tied all the way too, and it's like you have to kind of get in there, and I can't get the little clippers in, so I'm just like, screw it, I'm just use my knife. And it went like this, and it went all the way through, and it went straight into my finger. I was like, huh? Gina just looks at me, she goes, I'll get a Band-Aid. By the time she came back in that outside, like there was like a small river running down my hand. That's all right. Hey, look, it's Christmas colors anyway.
There you go.
Well, hey, good to have you guys. Rock, thanks for joining, buddy.
Oh no, thanks for having me. It's been a hell of a year, hasn't it?
It's been a year, and so Jim, James, Rock, you guys welcome, folks, welcome. This is going to be a year-end wrap-up episode, so I figure we'd wrap it up with a bow, and hence the seasonal hats are on this side of the podcast. The other two are over that way.
That's not my view. My view, it's diagonal, the hats.
Yeah, whatever. That's not how people are going to see this. They're going to see my view.
And
the people see my view.
I would just like to say also, it's diagonal the people rocking the CISO evolution, because I mean you barely see it back there, but it's back there. So
there you go.
Two of us supporting Rock, and then
it's cheating in the authors. I mean, come on, it's cheating.
Mine is right there. You just can't see it.
You can't see it. It doesn't count.
I just realized what I said.
How many elves on the shelves do you have, or whatever those things are?
So these are my kids' elf on a shelf. That's my son. It's my daughter. They have we've made them custom for them. Nice. They have elves with their names on them, and our particular brand of elf is somewhere between rambunctious and slightly slow. So we've had them locked in themselves in cookie jars. One of them is stuck on top of the Christmas tree. The other last year, right before Christmas, they wrapped each other as presents. So just hands were sticking out. It was pretty funny. So all kinds of things these elves get into. Today they're joining me on the show because the boy elf had entirely too many cookies during the Christmas party at school, and actually my daughter probably had more sugar than anybody. But we had one kid. That had. And so they were allowed to make their own Christmas. You get the base sugar cookie, and you can put whatever you want on top of it. My buddy Brad's kid put so much sugar on his. He got sick and had to go home. I texted him like, "Dude, your kid's about to call you. He's gonna be sick in a minute." He's like, "Oh hell!" I said, "Good luck." So, all right. Well, it's December 19th as we record this. The year is almost over. For those of you that still celebrate the year-end technology freeze is in probably full effect. I remember those days.
Yep.
And if you're in the sales end of things, you're in a vendor. You've got just a couple more days to get your quota met, and you don't want to be doing it on the 30th and 31st like everybody else I know. So, and for everybody else, just enjoy.
Interestingly, more and more startups I work with, they're intentionally doing their fiscal years February 1.
Yeah.
Right, to avoid that.
That is your customers. Thank you. Also your employees. Also everybody else, and your families, right? Because I can't tell you how many times as part of a vendor, like it was December 29th, 30th, 31st at like 4 p.m. You're like, seriously? So now I got to get this deal in. I'm like, well, if you've waited this long, you've got a bigger problem.
Well, add on to the fact that nobody's in the office, right? Because everybody's out,
yeah, right. You're calling
2 weeks a year.
You're like, hey, can you come in and have legal sign this? No, I can't. Jim, I like the Santa hat. I love it.
There you go. I had to quickly go grab it. I think I pulled it off Santa on his way getting ready.
There you go.
It's a little warm though. I might have to take it off, but it go on a few times.
It fits so well with the shirt, though. I mean, I gotta say, I love the shirt.
You gotta get it on. You gotta get it on screen.
What's the bottom say? Now I have a machine gun. What?
Ho ho ho.
It's from Die Hard. Yes.
Yeah, Die Hard one, the first one.
Anybody that says Die Hard's not a Christmas movie, it is.
Cannot be my friend.
I saw that on like on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, just delete. I'm not following you anymore.
I've got a new favorite. I've got a new favorite Christmas movie, and that is the one with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. Not Scrooged. Spirited. Have you guys seen this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At the end, wait till the end of the show. But at the end of the show, put Spirited in your queue. I think it's on Prime. You will laugh. It's Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. You will laugh until it hurts. So do it before you eat. Otherwise, it's usually not the great result. We watched it with just us, and then watched it with our kids. And there are so many scenes where you're just like, oh god. Like if you like Bill Murray's Scrooged, and I love that movie. These guys take it up like it is on the Deadpool and Wolverine level of funny.
Oh my. Okay.
R+++ rated. It's great. What's your Christmas movie, guys?
My favorite Christmas movie?
Yeah. What do you watch every year? Do you have a tradition?
Die Hard. No, seriously, that and Christmas Story.
Did you like the new one? Did you like the remake, part 2?
I didn't even watch it. I can't bring myself to.
Yeah, I don't think anybody did.
Like I can't.
Yeah, Christmas Story is good. I like Christmas Story. I've watched it. We watch every year on New Year's Eve. We'll watch It's a Wonderful Life because that's an amazing. There's been something about like, oh, that's not really the great movie you think it is, and I'm like, okay, it's like Jim said, unfollow, unfriend, like. Get out of here. It's a wonderful. You don't know this, but Jimmy Stewart actually went and fought war. Like,
oh yeah,
that dude was legit.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty impressive. Jim, what do you watch every year?
Well, now the kids are grown up, right? I mean, we're more of Elf family. We're probably going to watch that one that you were talking about earlier.
We watched Elf last week and laughed until we cried. Yeah,
I love Elf. That's great. Die Hard, and I mean it actually. We got that one queued up, all 4 probably, even though the first 2. But back in the old days when the kids were small, we went really old school. The Grinch, the stuff you watched when you were a little kid, even the claymation stuff, right? So
Miracle on 54th Street
with your kids. What's that?
Miracle on 54th Street.
Yep, 100%.
The old black and white.
Yep, it has to be. It's the classics, right?
Yeah, James.
Yeah, I mean, Die Hard. I've watched it 3 times already. I think this past week, and then also like Christmas Vacation.
Oh yeah,
that's usually a big one.
Home Alone is another good one. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife has we have to watch Christmas Vacation every year. So, but like all those other ones, like honestly, I don't. It's a Wonderful Life. I don't even know if I've ever seen it, to be honest with you.
I can't be friends with you.
Those type of like Miracle on 35. I'd rather like a Christmas Vacation or something that's good and funny, not like wholesome. Get that junk out of here, right?
Hold on. Where's the goodbye, James? As I reach for the eject button,
Mute them.
There are so many really good like family movies that are out, and then obviously the old stuff, Rudolph and those claymation ones from ages ago. There's some pretty good stuff. So I think that there's a lot of good stuff out there. Just kind of picking what you want. You guys watch Die Hard, fine, so be it. Listen, when Bruce Willis said it's not a Christmas movie, that was the final word. It's not a Christmas movie. We move on.
He never said that. That was AI. Did. It was a deep fake.
Look at you.
Nope. He would have never said that.
And now he's kind of far gone, so he's not able to
defend himself,
convince you that that's the case. But not any new ones that claim that are definitely deep fakes. Hey, speaking of deep fakes, was this the year AI kind of got bonkers?
No, I don't think we've seen bonkers yet.
I keep seeing that. I keep seeing people repost it. That one where they get a bunch of people in an auditorium and they take their kids' pictures. And they have like somebody's daughter or something like age, and it's like, this is what you're doing by posting my pictures online. It's like there's some very interesting, and by interesting I mean not great, AI stuff happening. But you don't think this is the year that you think it's going to get worse, huh?
Yeah, I mean, as the technology advances and attacker or bad actor capabilities advance as well, right? I mean, I think we're just scratching the surface because the technology around deepfakes is just scratching the surface.
Yeah, we're seeing it as much. Do we see it as much as what we make it seem to be? Because you watch some of these shows, right? Like I watch a lot, like the FBI, Most Wanted, all those things. Yeah. And they cover these. Like they'll have like an episode on deepfakes and these high school kids doing this, but is it as prominent as what we kind of make it out to be? Because I don't feel like, outside of seeing a show like that, I'm not really seeing as much of that. Although they'd have you believe that it's like everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a big deal with the election. It's definitely dove off since the election. If you look at the AI incident database, I don't know, no hard data, but I'd say at least 30-40% of them, the incidents they report are around deepfakes of some sort. Wow. And I think now we're in a lull, post-election, holidays, whatnot. We'll probably see some more coming as the inauguration gets near. We have the classic case of, what was it, a company in Hong Kong where the employee got on and was, able to send over a large amount of money, got onto a Zoom with the CEO and CFO, and they were deepfakes, right?
I heard that. That is, that's interesting.
Are we seeing it a ton in the corporate environment? If we are, I haven't seen it yet. It's a lot more around misinformation and the election security stuff and all that fun shit.
I would say a couple of things. One is my immediate reaction was, remember, maybe I'm aging myself, but remember what we thought of the internet when Netscape was the hottest browser, right? Okay, and how far it's come. And I think it's one of these things where there's a lot of talk, but to James's point, I'm not going to say we're seeing a lot. I do believe the threats are going to come into it, but if I can steal 80 million with WhatsApp, why do I need to build an entire AI capability to fool you in a more fancier way, right?
Yeah.
People are losing vast amounts of money through WhatsApp scams. I mean, come on, right? So what's happening is I think we all sense that there's a lot of activity, but is it really, what level is it happening? But I think we all agree, and I'm with you on this one, Rock. I think the worst is yet to come. I think someone's going to tip it over, and it's just going to we're going to wake up one day and go, oh my,
Well, it's all just the poking, right? Like people are poking around to kind of see like what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
What it's just the entry level of it until they kind of start realizing, oh wait, this is the thing that's going to work. Like, let's dig into this.
Yep.
But with it being
you
new,
you guys
it's
want to
just
hear
a trial.
Weird one. So how we're all super paranoid about getting phished for these like package delivery scams and all that stuff. I got one for you. So I got one the other day, and it says, hey, an attempt was made to deliver your package. Now I've been expecting dirt bikes to show up, but the delivery date was Thursday. That would be today. So on Saturday morning, I get we're not home. So I get a note, bing, like it says, we've attempted, this is UPS. We've attempted to deliver your package, to your door. Nobody was home to sign for it. Click here to, like, I'm not clicking that. I deleted it. And like, duh. I go back on my Amazon. I'm like, yep, delivery's not for a while. Ignore. I get home, the thing, her yellow ring. I'm like, oh, tell me my notifications. The delivery attempt was made. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, did they also co-opt my Echo? Like, what's up? Turns out that was legit, and UPS did it that way. So UPS was independently delivering it of Amazon, and so my app, the Amazon app, was like, hey, delivery on Thursday. They had it here early, and they were independently messaging me without the two systems connected. And luckily, my paranoia and because who we are, like, no. But if I hadn't double checked, that would have gone back to wherever the hell these things came from, and I would have missed it. That's weird.
Yeah,
that's an interesting. It's an interesting thought, Raph, because my mind goes straight to the idea, like, when do we see that UPS scam take it to the next level where they start renting out Uber drivers and say, listen, I want you just to go up to this door holding a box, act like you're going to ring the bell, turn her back around with the box. And so that way they tie that UPS email or text message with, like, hey, I can see on my ring
doorbell notification, because we all have ring doorbells now.
It's kind of like the whole vishing and phishing thing tied together, right? I'm going to email you, then I'm going to call you.
Yeah,
but
tell you I emailed you.
How does that scale from an attacker return on investment perspective? How does that scale? You have to be hyper targeted. So, right. And like the vishing and phishing, right? All that shit can be automated, right? So it scales that way. But you get a human involved. Is the return on investment for the attacker worth it? Maybe if you're what we call growing up in Vegas, a whale, right? Big money person, gambling. But you're right. I mean, is that a valid, to use our parlance, threat vector? Absolutely.
I mean, if you think about like high level, right, corporate, like board members, execs, something where you're saying, hey, look, that's my big target. Not the average, like somebody's probably not going to do that to me. You're not going to get much, but when you talk about like security of your execs and these high levels, I mean, why not be able to take it to that next level? I mean, it's kind of an interesting thought. Maybe I just gave somebody a bad idea.
Yeah. I don't think we should be giving people ideas on this.
Can I ask a question that flips the question on reverse a little bit? I'm curious your reaction is, what responsibility does UPS have in trying not to make their junk look like spam, right? Because you got a legit one that look like spam. Do you think that they're in a position where they can maybe start creating a different protocol, how they meshes and all this kind of stuff in such a way that it's less easier to phish and scam through it? Or am I just being silly?
But this is, I want to say yes, but that they're probably going to, right? Their security team is probably working on something like that. And like when I get these weird ones. There's a particular bank that I'm not going to mention that I got like a card from for like special, like they're like, hey, get 25% off. If you're like, fine, I'll get your card. I'll take 25% off, whatever. And every night between 1 and 3 a.m., I get 2 messages that look like, hey, here's your 6-digit PIN for your app. If you didn't request this, click this link. Every night, twice between 1 and 3 at roughly the same interval. And I've done that. Like, I was like, this is weird. So I go into that like in my app, and I did send myself a forgot my password. So they would message me over SMS, my 6-digit code, and theirs is different. And it says, we will never ask you for, we'll never call you and ask you about this number, blah, blah. And so, but it's different than the one I get twice a night. And I'm thinking, that's weird. I want to go I've run the link through VirusTotal and some of those URLs lookout services. There's too many redirects for them to follow. So eventually it just says timed out. But it's interesting that these things are getting, like the arms race is getting really good.
Yeah.
And I think it leads to, it's kind of like, where the whole point of some of these deep fakes really, like it starts out being to trick you, but once everybody knows that these things are available, the whole point is to get you not to trust what you're actually seeing, whether it's true or false, right? Whether that weather person or the president or that FEMA person or whoever is actually real, or if it's an AI generated. And the whole point is to get you to distrust. I think and this might be a controversial statement, but I think security's done so much fear mongering around don't click this, don't do this, it's all evil, don't click links, don't share information. We've actually aided the enemy in terms of getting, like, if their ultimate goal or one of their goals is to get us to distrust our own technology, we're there, bro.
Yeah.
If you recognize that security, using computers in think about cybersecurity and the type of threats that come to you, and recognize that we, as humans, we associate with landmarks and signs and stuff like that, and a lot of that natural defensive mechanism for millions of years of evolution is like wiped away. Because I can put anything on your screen and convince you otherwise. Do you realize it really is very much a cultural thing? We talk about it in passing. Like we say, oh, awareness training is terrible, it sucks. And then we say, well, we should make it more about this or whatever. And then we just move on and say, let's put this technology and scare the crap out of everybody. But it has a byproduct. What it does is it makes it creates a lot of skepticism to the point where the pendulum swings all the way over to the other side. Where
I agree.
If everything sucks is bad, I'm going to click because what does it matter now? My social security number's out there 900 ways from Sunday,
Right. And
it's just, I think we have absolutely contributed to this all or nothing thing. And people are just like, well, I'm going to pick nothing then.
Well, I think I look at it from two lenses, right? There's the corporate standpoint where I think I agree with all this, but am I also happy that my wife is paranoid enough to not click on anything that comes through her text that she doesn't recognize? Yeah, I am. I'm ecstatic because I'd be dealing with the fallout. She's not technical at all, right? So, my mom, my mom's a lost cause, but you know what I mean? Like, do I want them being afraid to click on things? Yes. Do I want my users to be afraid to click on things? Not necessarily, as long as I've got the right controls in place. Like, we could go on a whole nother
speaking of which, my folks, and you know how, like, if you have parents, especially when they get older, you become their tech support.
Yes.
So they call me, not my brother, they call me. He's probably more technical and hands-on than I am, given that he's got 7 years behind me. But literally every link my dad gets in email, every text he gets, he goes, "Hey, I'm going to read this to you. Is this real?"
Oh, well, that's a little ridiculous.
But that's good because they've gotten stuff from Social Security Administration office. I'm like, that's not real. That's not a thing. The Federal Bureau of Tax Collection. I was like, also not a thing. Like all sorts of things and real ones, which I'm like, you know what? I'm going to report that as spam because you people are awful. Like, those tax, what do you call them? Like, hey, if we can help you owe the IRS nothing this year. I'm like, do not call those people. Do not click that link. But it's very interesting how through the years we've made technology something to want, to something that we should be cautious of, and now it's something we fear. And a lot of us are in that, like, I just don't want to click on things. I don't like, if you send me something, I'm not going to go to it. But somehow, like, going to www.website.com, that somehow feels better.
Yeah.
I'd rather people be critically thinking, not so suspicious and all that kind of stuff that they can't function. You know what I mean? Like sending you every text message, reading it to you, but stop for a moment and go, do you really think somebody's going to take away all your tax debt? Do you really think that car is for free? Does this just fundamentally doesn't make sense, right? Because you make a great point, Raf, is just because it looks bad doesn't mean it's bad. And just because it looks good doesn't mean it's good. I mean, we've had this conversation a million times, and it just, I think we just have to work on, when it comes to this particular thing, we have to work on the wetware a little bit more. And I don't know, but
I don't know that I have a really good solution or answer to this, because like our browsers are for a long time have been doing a relatively good job of telling you, like, don't do that. That you shouldn't do that. And people are like, nah, it's fine. Right. I want to play with the dancing kitty, GIF or whatever game, something. No, I want those casino chips for free. It's like, no, that's not, nothing is, like if somebody were to walk up to your door, I think this is my test. If somebody were to walk up to your door, offer you $1,000 if you just, let them in your house for 5 minutes, how many people would do that? Hopefully not very many, right?
I don't know.
I think more than you would think.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people would do it. What's the harm, right? I mean, that's what people are going to assume. What's the harm? You would come in my house for 5 minutes? I mean, heck, if you're willing to take the $1,000, you probably don't have anything worth stealing. $1,000, 3 new TVs, 50
personal safety, right? Like,
Robinson joined us, but he's messing with his video, so we can't see you. I don't know what you're doing with back there. Welcome, James Robinson, Mr. CISO. Are you? Can you hear us? Are you there? No. Maybe Jim, your internet troll. Oh, there he is.
How about now?
There we go.
Ta-da!
I don't know what it was doing.
Where's your
test
Where's
and
your
everything.
festivals?
Everything was good. It was golden. It told me you're good to go. Oh, come on.
Oh yeah, your dog. Okay, so now there's a James plus dog. Got it.
James plus dog. Yeah, he got locked in. I had to shut the door so people don't still walk in crazy.
Yeah, right. We're just kind of talking about technology at the moment that's kind of gone from insecurity that we've welcomed it to be cautious of it to now like fear it, and that's driving a whole new set of weirdness. In terms of both from our family, friends, and then at work, because we just spent the entire podcast talking about the role of the sock. How many socks this time of year are answering 100 questions a day of, hey, is this email legit? Hey, is this text legit? Hey, did my CEO really call me, ask me for gift cards?
The answer to that is always no. Always no.
Call him back and ask.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you got deepfakes now, so like you can even Zoom with a fake.
You can. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
and
have
kids are like, hey, you're acting a little weird. Can you just turn your head?
Right.
Right. I mean, it's still some basic stuff that we need to educate people on.
Robinson, what are you looking forward to in in terms of 20 and when 25 rolls around, that clock flips? What's new, like in terms of protection that you're hoping to put in place or thinking about?
Really, it's more the same in many ways. We're just, I don't even know, besides maybe a little bit of fishing for a holiday break. It's going to go basically from 24 to 25, and I'm going to wake up the next day and it's going to be more of the same at this point. Not too much else. With exec safety is coming up in a lot of different forums right now.
That's interesting.
There's definitely the other thing I see kind of popping up that's interesting. I'm trying to think about how to play into it more is like how does the kind of global security team start to play more into the takedown market, and what's that look like to be able to participate? Microsoft's done an amazing job working with different groups on takedowns and such, but how does this work? And I saw some postings and some notices that were coming from PayPal on some of the things that they're doing in this space and really pushing that. And I found that pretty interesting. And I think it's where the industry needs to be going more and more, right? We talk about always how the attackers and all can work together much easier than the defenders. So what does that look like?
That drives me freaking crazy.
Yeah, so that's one that comes to mind, and I've been talking internally to some of the different labs and teams, and how do we play into this? At what point? Netscope's obviously getting larger and larger, so we have a little bit more of a voice, and maybe some ways that we can help out a little bit better. So that's one. We have I think everyone some the continuous evolution of IAM and IGA and where we headed next. A lot of those items. I did hear from another group I was on earlier today, just chatting with some CISOs, and one of the CISOs brought up that for those who haven't started your pathway for SAP migration, realize that you only have a couple more years for that, and no one is moving SAP systems very quickly. So start now. You have 2 years, and your clock is, and it sounds like 2 years, that's forever, but
yeah, we did a two-parter on that a couple episodes back, a bunch of episodes back actually, with some folks, yeah, we had good Lord, I've now forgotten his name. I'm sorry, from SAP, and then Tom was on from Turnkey Solutions, and they were talking about that exact thing, but security within all that context. And it's, it's very interesting. I keep hearing, I learned a new term this past couple months called so identity security, ID security. Don't call it IDS, because I think that's the wrong thing. Or maybe we'll just repurpose it, because IDS, like, nobody
That's
uses
what we
anymore.
do. Just repurpose it. It adds the confusion, Raph.
Well, we don't need any more new acronyms for sure. Right? So just repurpose the ones that we're not using. I'm good with that.
But identity security is coming up quite a bit as a topic. And as a vendor, I see it in people discussing it. But like the tracking bad actors' badness through their identities, through compromised entities across multiple platforms, multiple systems. And Robinson, you probably got a pretty good view of that.
Yep. That
you guys are, what you guys do.
Yeah, because you can start to check the activity to one cloud, then to another. These are all systems that have been around for a long time, but it's just starting to be able to process that data, to be able to put that together and say, this internal person is compromised. You can see the behavior and the activity of their account. Then you can start to tie it together. Where else did they go? What else did they do? Nothing to do with that person themselves, right? But it was obvious that their system or account got compromised, and you can start to see that pick up pretty quickly. It's kind of the low and slow is still a really, really tough thing. But once it starts speeding up, that's when, a lot of the behavioral systems can really pick up that difference and that change. That's where you can see it really pick up pretty quickly. I found it pretty interesting, some of the IT worker attacks, if you haven't been watching those, but even how some of the providers are starting to do notices and awareness on IT workers, because they're able to see the other systems. Some of the EDRs are able to see the other systems and then do cross correlation on those, which I was like, that's pretty cool. I thought that was really, really cool detection that they're doing. And they're like, I think you have an IT worker, because we're seeing the same computer connecting to another customer, and from the same office, same location, same place, right? It's like another computer on your desk. That was pretty cool.
That's interesting in ways that being able to identify patterns. We used to do it by packets and machine names and IP addresses and stuff like that. And I think it's a good chunk of that is moving into a realm where I think identity it's so, like, the notion that we're just going to go compromise a system, try to then move around as a non-identified thing. I think because of all the APIs, because of all the stuff that's going on, I think that those days are, I think, getting to be behind us, which means that identity turns into that perimeter. And we've been talking about identity as a perimeter for forever. I think that now it's like a for reals. So we'll see whether this is something that will actually happen or not. But I'm starting to see that wave. Anybody else?
I would agree. What I'm seeing though is, so identity, but then we're still moving and flowing data all over the place. And I think our applications, I think it's almost more the evolution of the attack surface. And that evolution of the attack surface, in some cases in a company, you have multiple identities that you're operating with. And then you start to expand that out. You have multiple applications, but your system is still kind of, maybe it's still the single that you're operating from. But the data that people are now just moving around so quickly, it's just like from here to there, data just transfers and moves. Cloud to cloud connected systems move data around so fast. Pretty amazing.
Also, the structure of data. Remember we talked about structured, unstructured data detection mechanisms. I'm starting to see even just this massive increase in the complexity of how data is structured, because we're seeing things kind of synthesized at the endpoint, at the application layer, but when it travels across a network, it seems to become desynthesized in some ways. So it's like when it comes like labeling, tracking, kind of creating rules as if then that, this plus that, and then all of a sudden it starts catching things because this application is structuring data a different way. And so you're always trying to find ways of, you just mentioned something, James, that drives me nuts, is with a click of a button, you can move a terabyte out of the network. Was that on purpose? Is that a bad guy? What is it? But it's happening all the time. So it's like, how do we get around it? And we've had some really, really, really good shows recently about that with Jason and the team around data classification stuff. So it's technology moving in that way, but it's just getting harder and harder, I think.
Yeah, I think this is also why we've seen a huge uptick this year in non-human identity startups as well, right?
Yeah.
Right. There's a ton of movement in that space, and I think it's ripe for consolidation, whether it be through the CASB providers or whether it be through the IAM, IGA, IGP providers or IDP providers. But I think that's why they're like, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 non-human identity startups I could think of off the top of my head, right, entering the market right now because of all that. And then from a data movement perspective, right, like we haven't gotten our data governance right for the data that we're used to seeing, knowing, and feeling. Now throw vector databases in the mix, right? And you're literally just seeing like this numerized string of numbers flowing across the network with no context of what that data really is. That's gonna be a really, really difficult challenge.
Yeah, I'm in the cooey quagmire right now with CMMC, and if we're going to talk about like 2024 and what's next in 2025, I don't know. There's like a certain world that's being affected by this really heavily, and then as we move through the years, it's going to start expanding out as we work with various organizations, whether they're working with just the DoD or beyond federal agencies. But even just the cooey thing has just really taught me that we just do not have a grip on it. And Brock, you said it perfect, was even with data we know and understand, we still have troubles.
I think that's the problem we see, right? Like we can't even do what's currently here, and they're so quick to jump on what's the next thing, and you use that as the excuse to not have to do the current thing, right? Because now you can come back and look at it and say, well, we can't do all the data because we've got, Brock, we got vector stuff going across here, and it's like, oh, well, that's holding up all the other stuff. And you don't go and say like, oh yeah, we didn't have the base stuff done before.
Yeah,
it's I've got this new thing I can't do, and that just automatically consumes everything else. That says, oh, I can't do anything right because of this, and it's like, well, we could have done all that other stuff right first, but we didn't.
Yeah, you're gonna trigger me because I can't stand it when people say that, not realizing that some of this new stuff may actually enable some of your tech debt, if you will, like the backlog. I hope you enable yourself to go take care of that back and take care of the fundamentals. We haven't gotten by security right, and then we want to do AI. The business is doing AI. Sorry, right? Sorry that you haven't figured out your basic security hygiene. Maybe you could use AI to help be a force multiplier to do that basic security hygiene. It all has to be taken into context, right? But I run into too many people that like make that black and white distinction, and I'm like, get off my lawn. Like seriously, I've got no time for this.
Let's talk about tech debt, because that's an interesting one. I think we've not had an episode on that, but I think it might be a good opportunity to really, talk that through. And even if you're a startup, you start accumulating tech debt from day one. And the challenge I've seen that starts to get bigger is the longer it sits there, the uglier it gets. And somebody was joking about like declaring tech debt bankruptcy, and I was like, yeah, that's cute, in like a context of a conversation, but you don't just go to 500 systems that you haven't touched in 10 years and go, all right, I'm just going to turn those off. No big deal. Like, because sometimes payroll stops and, assembly lines quit moving and stuff. And that's not okay. And so, I don't know, tech debt has been an interesting one for me, because we can bring that into the context of vulnerability management reporting. We can talk about tech debt in terms of, prioritization. There's just so much stuff that can go around tech debt. Anybody want to take a shot at it?
I do, because I got an alternate thought on it. Alternative thought. Who does tech debt well? Anyone got any ideas of any space areas, things?
I mean, finance sucks. Healthcare is the worst. Industrial is awful. Retail,
terrible.
Back end systems, no.
Yeah.
Give me one. If you say government, I'm going to walk out.
No, yeah.
The government.
I don't even want to go there. Let's wait till January. Let's wait till January for that.
Right.
I think that,
on start over.
I think that's why you have these ideas of, tech that, like, no one wants to deal with it. No one knows how to deal with it. There's no real approach. I did see a pretty cool startup the other day that's trying to even do cross correlation and try to get you back to change control failure much faster, and look at that. And I was like, that's pretty cool, but it doesn't get you to this tech debt problem, right? You had this one crazy library that you didn't factor in, and it blew everything up. I think that's a challenge. That's why we have such a problem across the board. You can't regulate it. Like, how are you going to regulate it to get it clean? There's nothing that you can really approach the problem with that we know it has success behind it, right? I don't know, clothes, like the fact that industry changes, and so you buy new wardrobes because fashion changes. I don't know. Then you see the person walking on the street and you're like, yeah, that's from the 80s. I guess maybe it's back. Like, is that what it is? Old libraries end up sticking around so long that they become not vulnerable anymore. We joke around that, right? But that's the challenge. There's nothing that really we can point to that says this is how you're supposed to do it. I've heard one successful story from a friend who was in fintech that after every major release, they had a tech debt sprint. And on our internal security engineering team, we actually implemented that for a while, and it worked really, really well. That was where they would look back and they would say, okay, here's some things that we didn't get done that we really wanted to for the release, and these are just good maintenance, or this is where we're going to maybe improve. Some of our CD systems is in that sprint, so they kind of made them a little bit infrastructure-y, kind of mixed them up that way, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I wonder if some newer teams that are being now formed with some of the more successful SRE teams that are engineering oriented, maybe they would have a little bit more support in it. But I think it's still pretty tough to decompose an application to understand what is your application made of, and what is actually called. I mean, reachability analysis is just coming to the forefront, and that's to support vulnerability analysis. We had some success over this year with that, but that's generally kind of newer technology. The last time I saw a technology like that was when I was at Emerson, and it was doing it for Java applications, and that was a long time ago, and there was nothing else that came after. So I think that's the problem, is we have nothing to say, here's what success looks like.
Well, so I think one of the things that we see too is, like, even your example of having, like, hey, after this release, we're going to do a sprint for tech debt. That's if you're still doing releases. How many times have we put a system out there and said, this is complete, like, it works. I wrote that library, I'm never writing it again. Like, we just let it sit and live for years on end. right? So we don't treat software, we don't treat systems as this is an ongoing thing. Maybe if it's your main thing, right, you're going in, but still you're focusing on features. You're not going back and saying, hey, look, I need to go back and revisit this, right? I mean, I've walked into places, it's like, hey, you're still using .NET that expired back in 2012. And it's like, yeah, but we don't update those apps. Like, they work, they function, they do what we need, right? And no longer are we going there. Because I've talked to teams that they do it where, hey, anytime we do a PR, we check all of our libraries. NPM tells us, hey, this one's outdated. It better be updated before you push the release. So like there are teams that do it, but then that falls short when you're not going to, like, we're done active maintenance on this, right? It's gone into the archives of, it's going to sit there. And then 10 years down the road, we realize, oh, wow, like everything that thing runs on is end of life. The server that it's on, the framework that it's on, everything is end of life, and that kind of, the longer it's there, the uglier it gets, because now you don't just go from .NET 2 to .NET 8 with a push of a button.
Yeah, James, I've heard you talk about that before, and I swear I've been listening to that variations of that conversation since the first OWASP conference I've ever been to, and I don't know that we've done much better. I think there was a shift to take software and applications and treat them as a living thing that needs to be updated regularly. But that mentality, I don't see enough of it. And you guys that work in the enterprise, correct me if you're seeing better, but I don't see the momentum that says, hey, we built this thing to count the number of widgets in our warehouse. Okay, they're going to assign a project manager, we're going to assign a product owner, and that product owner is going to have budget to make sure that thing gets reviewed regularly. And if an open source library you used has a vulnerability, you can have the time and effort, resources to go, rebuild that, make it not vulnerable, and redeploy it. Like, that never happens. Maybe not never. That rarely happens. Am I crazy?
I can share characteristics of teams that I see do it better.
Okay.
Especially, I think in engineering, like software engineering teams, they get it a lot more because a lot of times they have to deal with stuff, especially for customer-facing product. They get it and they see it a lot better. Back-end systems, analytical systems, things like that, tend to get a little less attention sometimes. IT organizations traditionally don't do a good job of this because IT is systems and release. But where I see IT organizations starting to improve is when they think of, kind of the services and the products and the things they build as really IT as a product lifecycle, not IT as an IT lifecycle, which is typically, I bought this thing for 3 years, I got a depreciation, let me go ahead and run it out of depreciation, then get it out of here, get it off my books type of thing, which I think when you look at it as a product lifecycle, it's completely different. And so I see that teams do better updates, they manage their tech debt because they're always thinking about it more from a product lifecycle perspective, because they know that it's only going to have a certain amount of shelf life and then they got to get rid of it. Just like all product has a beginning and end. And those teams I see do a little bit better job. Whereas I would say back-end or traditional IT teams don't do a great job. I do look to hope that as we start getting into low-code, no-code systems, that those things can be upgraded a little bit faster and better, and kind of do that as a subsystem. And I think that we'll be able to get there eventually, as long as they have loose coupling and not tight coupling to libraries and things that have all these dependencies that then become very messy. And that's one thing that I've been kind of thinking about and leaning into a little bit more for my teams internally that are really, really good and really strong at software development. This is a burden they have to carry. But for the teams that are trying to take advantage of orchestration automation systems that are not, writing Python every single day, I think that subsystem should be able to take care of it for them.
I think I have a question too, though, is when we talk about tech debt, like, we never have the conversation of what's acceptable tech debt. What is, how do we prioritize tech debt? I mean, you could sit there. Am I on mute? No.
No.
Sorry. That's what Raf said. But, you could sit there and say, okay, well, what do we classify as tech debt? Is it because, the formatting of the code isn't exactly how we'd like it to be, and we consider that tech debt? I want somebody to go back and fix it. Is it low-level vulnerabilities that SAST identified, and it's like, look, this is not reachable. Like, yes, technically it's a vulnerability in theory, but it could never be exploited in 100 years? Or is this tech debt of, hey, my Windows server is about to expire and I need to be able to update to that? Or, my .NET is about to go end of life, or Python is about to go, and I need to get from Python 2.5 or 2.7 to 3. That's a much bigger change that matters than it is, hey, okay, yes, I've got a ton of tech debt, but none of that tech debt is really causing me issues.
James, I'm really glad you brought this up, because that's where it always starts for me, is what are we wrapping the definition around? Because I can tell you that exact example you gave. Look at pharma, look at medical industries, healthcare industry, especially the providers, right? So, what is wrong with the IoT or whatever, the code that's running on that MRI? If it's producing images, it can run the machine and get that information to an image specialist, but is it because it's not secure? Is it not performing correctly? I can see those. But if it's not exposed to any additional risk and it's performing as needed into the future, that tech debt only becomes tech debt when that concept is if it's limiting the business or the ability to move forward. That, I think, for me, that's where it represents a great risk to the business, whether it be those things. But I think there's a lot of stuff out there that I think people are calling tech debt that is just because they want the newest and the shiniest thing, like the new fancy.
Yeah, but there's
code.
a difference between, Jim. I'm there. I'm with you. I'm gonna maybe not 100%, but there's a difference between old systems and old systems. The pivoting around risk, old systems that pose a risk, and whether that's a risk of a vulnerability, or it's not just a security thing. It can be an operational risk. Like, hey, this old thing that's been sitting here, there's no backup for, there's no DR plan for. This payroll system that runs on Fox Pro from the 90s, like, hey, we don't have a backup for it. There's nothing necessarily security wrong with it, because if you're writing 0 days for Fox Pro,
good on you.
I can't help you. Man, you need a hobby. But I think that there's a broader envelope for when we're talking about technical debt, and that is things that pose some level of risk to the operational process of the business ability to operate, whatever your company is, right? And so there are times where it may not be vulnerable to anything, but it's old technology that poses a risk in and of itself because it's old. And it may not be just the software. It could actually be the system that's running there, right? That assembly line with that microcontroller that's been there for 15 years, man, you know what? Now they make hot swappable ones. You're like, nah, but this one works just fine. Yeah, but there's no replacement for that. And when it does inevitably short out, burn out, whatever, hits the end of its duty cycle, and you pull it out, now it's an unexpected downtime as opposed to the planned downtime. Yeah. Where we replace it with something new that can be hot swappable. So there's many ways to touch that, and I think that but we need to use risk broader than just security.
That's what I'm saying is operationally you have to take the bigger, wider view. But I think you'll find that more things, not as many things, fall into that view. That's what I'm trying to say is if I know that, like the duty cycle, I think that if you look at it through those lenses, that you figure out there's a lot of ways to view those things, and maybe it doesn't need to be upgraded now. Let's plan for it in a different way. I don't know. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
No, I was going to say, as much as I hate book stuff from especially ISC squared, like we forget as an industry or security professionals, often that availability still falls under that CIA triad. And it's not just preventing DDoS attacks, right? And, like in the case you brought up with the MRI machine, that goes down, that's millions of dollars a day to the hospital. Right. Average MRI takes 30 minutes, probably $100,000 per MRI, do the math. Right. So we kind of forget that, right? That we are I mean, we're not like necessarily have to be in IT infrastructure space saying availability is our responsibility, but we have to be definitely leading those conversations whenever we see availability risk.
I think industry is kind of seeing it a little bit. I mean, I was talking to my GR team about DORA and regulation being applied there. And in some cases, their feeling is we understand some of the things at DORA, but we don't understand even all the items that are going into DORA. But I can tell you that we're getting the inbound questionnaires. They're coming left and right from customers in preparation for something that is right around the corner, January 1st. So that's kind of an interesting one, that operational resiliency and risk, and how does IT and cyber play into that? It's something that continues to grow and become more and more of a conversation. And maybe that's because of events that we've seen over the last couple of years, but then also it used to be really, really impactful to me when my credit card would get compromised, and now I can claim it compromised, and my iPhone gets the new card number instantaneously, and then I got to wait for the dang plastic to show up and get mailed to me, right? It's amazing how that works. Raph, you remember the blog I wrote? I don't even think it's available anymore, but it was about how certain attacks, cyber attacks, fit on the hierarchy of needs, as those hierarchy of needs, right? And certain ones we used to think, oh, that's really impactful to me, and then you really look at it and you're like, it's not much, that's not a big deal. So I think that going back, I think the operational resiliency will become more and more of kind of a sub theme that's probably going to take its own wings and start to fly a little bit. And it may be, that space may be the new BCP-DR, because that's a little, I don't know, a little old, little dead, maybe a little bit, right? It's like, who really? But is it? But it just maybe needs to be something new, something shiny. Maybe that's where we're headed.
Is that a natural progression of, like, we see, especially in the CISO space, like there's so much talk about putting in the business terms, like put it in the risk of business risk, not just, hey, there's a vulnerability. Does that kind of just naturally progress into the BC, the DR, like that side of the house, and saying, hey, look, everything's kind of pushing more to the business than it is what would traditionally have been, just, hey, I've got vulnerabilities. What do they mean? I don't know. Just, I can hack you.
It has to, right? Because a ransomware event could be just as impactful, more impactful often to a business than headquarters burning down, right? So, you have to have that tie-in. And, by definition, resiliency is kind of the shift of not if, but when. And like to James's point, I think BCDR is the if, and cyber resiliency, operational resiliency is the when. And we need to continue making that shift towards that. Like, shit's going to hit the fan. It's a matter of time. Hopefully, because you're resilient, it's not as bad of an impact, and you're back up to normal relatively quickly as you would have before. But I don't think nobody should be thinking, oh, this can't happen to us, whether it be a cyber event or otherwise, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we may have another pandemic in 15 years. Who knows?
Right? We might have another pandemic in 15 minutes. Listen, I like where you guys are going with this. I hope that this becomes more of a through line rather than a rule rather than the exception, because I think we can tie a bunch of this together, right? When you talk about identities, where does all the modern identity, security identity, access management, all the good stuff that we put out today, where does it die? At the foot of something that's been there for 25 years that nobody can integrate anything with because nobody knows how. Yeah. And that's not, identity is not the only place. Look, we do, we do a lot of this where companies want better visibility into their networks, but their networks grow by accident, by acquisition, and by urgent need, and not always by plan, right? So they don't always have the right gear in place for visibility. There are I would say more often than not, entire network segments will be like, hey, that's weird. Do you guys know about that? They're like, that's not a thing. That's not a network segment. That's got to be an error. Like, no, I'm watching packets sail across it right now. They're like, oh, those two are connected? That's a problem. And for example, a company that was divested from a major company 18 months ago, still sharing traffic. What? Like, that's not good. But you see that and you sort of wonder, how the hell how did that fall? Like, how did they miss that? Right? Because it's a line item on a spreadsheet somewhere that nobody knows because nobody's around from that time. Or it's an application that people just didn't stop using. And so it never became inactive. I in the early 2000s, the company I worked for, when I worked at GE, there were so many different spots in the network where we're like, what the hell is that? Right? You point to a device, you're like, what is this? There's a lot of traffic going to this thing. And they're like, I don't know what's been doing that since I was here. Right? We had places where we had asymmetric routing, which is unbelievable. Like you nat one way, or natting rather, like your device nats out, the other device nats back. Yep. And you want to break things, get one of those out of sync. Like everything goes to hell.
That was confusing.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Or better yet, I worked on one system that had asymmetric routing on the outbound to the internet, but then it had administrative connections on the back end of them. So it had two different network interfaces on it, and the internet public interface was asymmetric routing, and on the back end was a direct network that also had an internet connection because you had to get remote access, and that's how you manage the servers in the data center. Blew my mind.
Terrifying.
Every time there was an issue, I was like, how do you even start troubleshooting that? And number one configuration was make sure that system is not a router, because it would melt down that entire network.
Yeah.
Raf, I think you touched on something, if I may, is you talk about these things in the form of like network visibility and that sort of dynamic that you said. I wish I could remember how you put it, like by accident, by acquisition, or there was, I wish I remember exactly. Yeah, and necessity, right? And your perspective, arguably from that visibility, but I think you could put other words there like ability to risk, compliance. Brock was talking about agility, or be able to react in an environment. We have to come to the grips, and then even tech debt. All these things are not able to react as quickly to the craziness of what it means to run a business and move and shake and change and products and services and mergers and acquisitions and divestitures that already have a slew of kind of, well, Tony set that up 6 years ago. You know what I mean? So we have a very steep hill to climb, man, on all fronts.
Yeah, I mean, Raf, you ask the how. How does this happen? Because we still don't have the fundamentals down, right? Nobody does hardware asset management really well. They certainly don't do software and application management really well. Nobody's got really good data flow diagrams. Nobody's got really good up-to-date network diagrams. They maybe, if they have good ones, will update them yearly. In the meantime, it's changed 127 times during that year. Nobody goes back when they do a new deployment or deploy a new system, update the BCDR plans, right? That's how it happens.
The number 1 and 2 use cases for network visibility product is, drum roll please, asset identification and classification, and 2, show me all the networks I don't know exist.
I think, you see the same thing with software. I was just saying this the other day to somebody. We were joking around, like if somebody get access to the repo, they're like, oh man, we could go start our own company. I was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like most code at this point sucks. Like I wouldn't want, because you start with an idea, and then 5 years later, right, you went from a napkin to build it to the napkin, to then add on features and add on features and add on, like today, if I were to go back and look at that app, like I'd know exactly how to build it, but it wouldn't be how we spaghetti put it together earlier. And same thing with our networks. Like we get the acquisitions, we get all the stuff like, hey, I need this, throw it in. And we never go back to say, okay, let's make this right. Like I had to add these features to this software. I had to do some stuff that really doesn't go with our architecture. How do I go back and fix that outside of, hey, we need to stop everything, no new features. We're going to rewrite everything from scratch to re-architect it. right? Like we just don't have that time, and nobody's got that ability to go back and do that. So you get these systems that are, just so kind of spaghetti code just because of that.
I think you get some.
I mean, you're part of a software company.
Yeah.
How often do you guys tear through old like stuff that's been there? And I don't want to ask you anything that's top secret, but like, sometimes always or never is a good way to look at it. Like, I having the ability to have everything online and everything software has got to be easier than having hardware out there, which hardware life cycles are forever plus a day.
It is. It's much easier, and I'll say so. I did some research at one time and looked at a company, and if a company is progressing and growing, obviously not all companies are successful, but if a company is progressing and growing, their code base really for the core of their product and what they have, especially as they're growing because they're putting more things onto that product, is getting refactored and rebuilt every 3 to 5 years, which was actually pretty interesting research, because what it made me kind of realize in one way was, even if you had your code repository and intellectual property taken from that perspective, the life cycle that you have to really worry about is kind of within that window of 3 to 5 years. But that's if you're growing. It becomes harder and harder as you ship code, not deploy code, and I'm going to break those apart, because then your dependencies on others. So how many, I'll just say, like, how many, well, even that, but how many 2500 series switches are still out there, routers from Cisco, right? And you're like, oh, none, they're all end of life. No, they're not.
Wrong.
They are end of life. They're not end of life. Yeah, they're not. They're end of support, not end of life. Those things are still working. Bits are still going. Things are still happening, and they don't get updated. They don't get anything because the move to actually get those updated, they don't. And I would go back to some of the things that CISA is putting out there about, whose responsibility is that? Is that the customer's responsibility, or the person who produced the software and the product? The security by design principles and the items around the secure software initiatives that require updates to even be available. That's a problem. In some cases, updates aren't even available, or they don't make it easy, or systems still ship with default passwords and things like that. Like some of these foundations, I think we'll see probably in the next decade, you're really going to start to change. Because I think that we also are just moving faster, but that research that I did kind of told me, that 3 to 5 year cycle of active code and building product, because what you built, kind of James, to your point, what you built, then as the company grows and changes, can't sustain what you're doing in the future. So you have to go refactor those pieces. Now that can be a small refactoring, right? Such as I need to change the way the fields on the API are taking in data because I need to pass this over, something like that. Or it can be this entire component was written more monolithic, and we're going to go to something that's going to be microservice, or we're going to go from something that's on a VM to a container to a hosted container. That transition and change causes you to refactor that code and rewrite it, and and that's your opportunity to take out the tech debt that exists there. Where hardware, it's done. It's done.
I have a particular insight that I don't know if it's still relevant because it's been 20 years, but where we struggled 20 years ago as a company was we were only as fast or as nimble maybe as every component we were connected to. And being in finance, there were upstream things and downstream things, and you couldn't get those out of sync. So like the supply chain had to move in increments all at the same time. Now we could, if there was a vulnerability in struts or Spring, for example, you can go back and update that as long as there wasn't a function that the upstream or downstream provider needed to run, or a particular it relied on a particular version, because if they didn't update and you did, you broke the thing and you're financially liable for it. and I know as we go to kind of microservices and everything connects to everything else, but it's done in a way that they're a little bit more independent now, right? Like pieces can break independently. There's not just one monolith of industry. I think finance still sees a good chunk of that. I know healthcare does because we just witnessed it. There's a whole lot that I think modernization is important, but the modernization talk in theory is here. Modernization reality is like trailing it by 18 to 24 months or so. And those on the bleeding edge can talk a good game and execute a good game if they're independent of the rest of the game. And I think that's where things get ugly. And if there's anything that we need to put more effort into as a not just cybersecurity, but like just technology partners, when you look at your supply chain and how you interact with other things that you need to do to conduct business, whether it's processing a credit card, paying an invoice, looking up where the truck coming to your location is with that latest Christmas present that you're trying to get, like all those things, HR, whatever. The brittleness really is in the interconnectedness. And I've said that a couple of times over the years, and to various, I say varying degrees of whatever. But I think as we have, we're talking AI, we're talking just really far advanced autonomous technology that don't really depend on these other things anymore. And back here, we've got a process that if you change that, everything after it dies. That still exists.
It does, but aren't AI agents essentially the microservices of the AI world, right? And we're moving more and more down that path too.
Yeah. Which means you can compromise one and blow the whole thing up. Got it. Good times.
Yeah.
Your dog wants out, James.
I know. Yeah, well, let him out.
I love that when we do these things, like real life sometimes shows up. It reminds us that we live in the real world, guys. We've got. I think we figure we've got about 15 minutes or so of show, 20 minutes or so. Let's talk future, because we could talk about like the biggest hacks of the year, the biggest issues of the year, and frankly, there was only two candidates now. Thank you, with the telcos being compromised, whatever the something Salt
Typhoon,
yeah, that one, and then that healthcare provider that generated some issues a while back. Like I think those are the two undisputed champions of the of the year.
Can I just say something about Salt Typhoon real quick?
Yeah, go.
Like FBI came out earlier this week, after all this stuff, saying yes, you all should absolutely move to Signal, WhatsApp, whatever, right, for encrypted messaging. But oh, by the way, those companies need to change and let us have a backdoor in. Like they doubled down on it. And I'm like, okay,
yeah,
ran over.
Yeah, I don't know. The two arguments, but terrorists and who will think of the children. Those are the two arguments, right? Well, you have to, like, law enforcement needs access, and we need to have the legal ways in, and then you realize that the legal way, there's a million ways around doing it the legal way. It gives you access to the legal way. I don't know. I'm like I said, I get regular SMSs that I'm pretty sure aren't from my bank.
But they're talking about it in the context of, hey, the Chinese are in, it's bad. Yeah. So by enabling a backdoor into the systems, what makes them think that the outcome would be different?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because we're in it, that we're the good guys. That's the difference.
But the backdoor is there.
Did I not set this sarcasm
I know.
tag properly there?
I know.
The backdoor is locked. It is locked.
Only we have the key.
Mm-hmm.
Only the people that support you and trust you have the key. Okay.
All right, this conversation is about to go
this is going to go in a bad way real fast. All right. Let's look at the next 12 months. And I don't do predictions because those are dumb. And we all know the only ones that come true are the ones where we say like, hey, things are awful. They're going to get more awful. It's going to get awfuler. But over the course of the next year, what are you guys expecting from, and I don't mean like from calendar to calendar. I'm saying like in the near future, what are we expecting that's going to actually change more than the other things in our line of work? Damn, it got quiet.
I mean, the obvious one is AI is still going to be a thing, right? So how do we wrap our arms around that? But I think specifically, oh God, this may go off the rails again. A lot's going to depend on what this administration does with regards to regulation. What CISA ends up looking like after the transition from Gen, right? All that kind of stuff. So I think it's almost too early to tell, but I mean, AI is going to be a thing. It's not going away. It's not like we thought the cloud was a fad. And here it is, right? AI is a thing. It's going to continue. The push for agents is going to continue. Agentic AI is going to continue. RAG is continuing to be a thing because it's going to be critical to how agentic AI works. How do you secure all those data flows, all those pipelines, all those services, all the prompt injection and the model poisoning and stuff that can now happen in line kind of between the agents. So I think that's going to continue to grow. I'm also kind of biased because it's kind of a passion of mine. But I think businesses are still going to continue to, I don't know if much is going to change from an organizational standpoint with regards to the stance on cybersecurity. Yes, we know it's bad. Yes, we're going to do stuff. Yes, we're going to give press releases saying our cybersecurity and privacy are very important to us, and we're taking measures.
Yeah.
I don't know if anything's going to change, right? I mean, the SEC's starting to slap down people, thankfully, for incomplete disclosures and misleading disclosures. I don't think the slap on those wrists are hard enough to change behavior. And we'll see what ends up finally happening with the SolarWinds stuff, right? So I think a lot of that will chart the at least the direction we need to go in. Maybe not necessarily the path, but the direction.
The question is, how do you get to where's that balance between hard enough when you talk about like SEC coming in, like we're going to slap your wrist, but how hard do we slap it? Do we slap it enough that you completely go out of business? Do we slap it not enough where everybody's just like, okay, yeah, we see you're doing it, but it goes back to like the credit card getting stolen, right? Like, yeah, okay, whatever, but it's something like cyber insurance will take care of it or whatever will take care of it. Like, how do you find that balance? Yeah. And it's obviously going to be a different balance between, the smaller shops to the bigger shops of what really would say, hey, you better, like, we need to fix this type of thing,
I think that's different for literally every company, which is hard.
Robinson, thoughts?
I would agree. AI is not going anywhere. All the business teams that I'm working with internally, they want to do more with AI product wise, definitely more with ML and AI and doing things there, continuing to invest in that. And I think we're seeing the benefits. I see it within my SOC, or even we can bring people on board. They don't have to be, software programmers, and they can still write workflows. We have interns that will build us workflows using automation tools that are, becoming easier and easier. And, that's pretty amazing, watching some of that. I think we'll probably still have challenges, I would say, in many cases with pipeline and development and resourcing teams and figuring that out. What's the right mix for every company is going to be different. And I think the simple equation is always what's your risk profile and trying to take it back to that. But then, it's difficult inside a business, to figure out what's that mix, right? Is it 10 or 12? I don't know. Like, they feel very close, right? So, and things like that are always coming up. I would say that some of the other things that we will see, come, I think the SEC will do more. I think that some of these, there's a certain point I think there's a certain point where, they are going to have to push more and more, and I think they're starting to, push on organizations, and it gets recognized. Board of directors get recognized then, executives get recognized then. So I think that they will definitely continue to push and try to do more. I think even through administration change, I think that still is going to happen for a while. I don't know. I don't know that like come February or March, like we're just going to have an entirely different U.S. government. I think there's it'll probably evolve over a little bit of time, and they probably have about 2 years to really get things because of re-elections and all.
Yeah.
That they have to. That's a pretty fast shot clock in government terms, we'll say. Right. But I think in some cases efficiency is fine. Business has to run with efficiency, right? So I think in some cases there's probably some efficiencies and some gains and some good things that we can gather from reviewing everything. I mean, it's kind of a pain in the butt still to do file some paperwork or do some things right inside of the government. It can still be painful. Some of the other things I think that we'll see happen over the course of maybe the next couple of years. I don't know. I still brought it up earlier. I think the threat networks and takedowns and doing things like that, I think we'll start to see that happen more and more, or at least I hope so. I hope that we really do figure out how to intercommunicate and share indicators and how those are really powerful for each other and continue to build kind of a defensive base that way. I think it will change. The indicators just won't be domains and IPs, but trying to get more and more into characteristics. I would say that we need to also take a look at how like what does it mean for your data to be AI ready? It's still a difficult thing to understand, which is what feeds some of the misbehaviors of AI. Is because your data is not necessarily ready. Prompts and things like that, and you can goof around with those. Feels a lot like Google dorking to me and Google hacking from back in the day. It's just kind of a new cool thing, and it works, right? But I think that still we have a lot of data that is going to end up in these AI systems, and it's going to be the bigger problem of it.
I feel like the relevant question, James, is what is the biggest threat to business next year, and why is it AI?
Well, I think we'll have to see. Are you talking about businesses operations? Because I think in some cases there's efficiencies and things that are going to come from AI that are going to be amazing, and we'll never see this much productivity. And I think the year is already gone, and it's going to go faster next year, either because we're getting older or because we're doing more business. And it's probably a little bit of both. So I think in that case, you can look at it as the biggest opportunity or the biggest threat.
I think that necessarily it's both at the same time, because never mind what Rock said about prompt injection and all these different things that we can manipulate. I'm looking at this from a business context where lots of companies are right this moment are rushing headlong into a technology they neither understand nor really know how to get value out of. So they're like, spaghetti, is it cooked? Let's find out. That didn't stick. Let's try something else. And I think the trial and error part, because of trial and error like that, I think that because of the implications of artificial intelligence in terms of algorithmic response to input, the threat is bigger than just simply trying chatbots, like an old school chatbot, right? There's a bigger threat than it was previously. Like this thing can give away, an AI chatbot can give away airline tickets for $1, and legally, contractually, turns out you got to honor it, right? And lawyers can get AI support to then stand in front of a judge and cite cases that never happened. That's weird. So if we're gonna have to get better at it before we start using it in real life, and I have to look at Microsoft's like, hey, you're gonna pay for this, but don't trust a damn thing this thing says without checking it yourself, because it's it's AI, it's still in beta. Like AI is going to be in beta for the next 5 to 7 years. It will of course be useful during that time, but if you're thinking you're going to just drop it in, turn it on, and it'll be value for you, you're gonna be like, remember when cloud happened and you lost all that money and got hacked all those times? Yeah, that's gonna happen again.
Yeah, the behavior is the same, right? Like we see this over and over again. Dive in headfirst into cloud, see what sticks. Dive headfirst into IoT, see what sticks. Dive headfirst into SOA architecture, see what sticks, right? Like the behaviors is the same. Like we should be expecting anything different there. I agree with you. The potential bad outcomes can be amplified with AI, and I would also argue AI should never be out of beta. Like in the sense that there needs to be some sort of human in the loop mechanism. How that scales, I don't know, right? Yeah. But you know, we should never, my opinion, just completely blind trust AI. Right?
Yeah, never let AI run fail. But I feel like that's the same, slightly different context. But I feel like it's like the same thing where we say, hey, we're going to outsource all of our IT to a low-cost offshore provider. So they'll do all the work. By the way, we're not going to trust them because we're not really sure if they're any good. So you guys have to double check all that work and still join those calls. But wow, look, efficiency. I don't know. Jim, you've been quiet, and I'm going to give you the last word because we're going to end after this. Because James, you've already got it.
I don't know. There's so much I want to say. Everything.
Well, you're on the clock. Go.
This isn't an
everything. Yeah, right. Everything from AI in military applications and C5ISR and looking at the evolution of, counter UAS. I'm not going to get into the New Jersey junk, but I think I want to just hone in for 1 second. What Rock said, some humans should always be involved. I think one of the core challenges we're struggling with AI is we have to understand that not everybody is ethical. Not everybody is running at this thing in the same pace with the same desired outcome. All right, full stop. So while we're sitting here trying to pace ourselves by saying, oh, it'd be beta, let me tell you something. There are other entities on this planet, people, individuals, groups, agencies, whatever you want to call them, bad guys, good guys, everything in the different. They're launching that sucker. They're pulling the ripcord and going, what's going to happen, right? And I think on a global level, and it's not because of just whatever government structure may be in place for us or any other country for that matter, even though that does play out as politics, obviously. But I think there's a lot of interesting things happening right now. And I think in that rush to stay, I will tell you that, we, as a country, we've kind of gotten a little bit teeter-tottered, and it's no longer near peer. We learned that after a post-GWAT world kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of moving parts. Go read the book Chip Wars, for example. That'll make your blood run cold. There you go, right there in your bookshelf. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I think I'm just going to say I agree. I think AI is going to start taking on a new form. I think we're going to see it from the threat side much, much sooner. And I think we're going to see different things react to that. And businesses are going to push forward. They are going to leap forward because we have set a tone. And we heard a little bit of this when we were talking about tech debt. We set a tone as innovate or die, right? We just push. And now it's so deeply ingrained in our culture, and that's a global culture, that this train has left the station, man. We better hang on tight and figure it out quick. And you know what I'm saying? AI is going to get a little bit different. How it affects us in our daily lives and cybersecurity, I think it's going to come from the threat side first. So we need to amp up the ability on the defense.
All right. That's it.
Told you.
That's the final word. What's that?
Told you. I should have just passed.
No, man, I love it. There's a lot there. It terrifies the hell out of me that there are applications where a machine can make a life and death decision.
100%.
That scares me, whether it's autonomous vehicles or things that go boom, bang, bang.
Not yet. Like, we're not there yet. And that's what a lot of the regulation, the EU AI Act, the Colorado bill, all trying to put these wrappers around high-risk systems. We're not there yet.
All right. Maybe I've read wrong. Anyway, that's a good place to kick it. So, Robinson, thanks for being on, man. James, good to see you again.
Thank you.
All right, well,
good seeing everyone.
Good to see you. Jim, thanks for joining us this year. All next year, you're going to be on with us. That's good.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
And James, I see you every day, every time we do this. So whatever. So happy holidays, you guys.
Happy holidays.
Enjoy the end of the year. May you get through it with minimal Sev 1s and long conference bridges. And may AI not take over the world at midnight yet. And on that note, we'll catch you guys another time. another place on another Down to Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Wishing you all the best.